Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Run It Up Hangout today with my friend Scott Seaver. Wow, that's right. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
What's going on? Welcome to the studios for the very first time.
It's amazing to be in the studios. I love it. It's amazing. I'm excited to be a part of this.
All you ever hoped it was and more.
Way more.
Way more. So what's been going on? I feel like we haven't seen each other in a while. It's been probably since like the World Series, actually.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Something, yeah.
I've been on the poker grind, a lot of traveling
Right.
and a lot of playing. I was just in Australia and the Bahamas. I've been doing a lot of the poker tournament traveling recently.
Nice. How did Australia go?
Australia went great, actually, both poker and life-wise. Poker went well, and it's just an amazing city.
Nice.
I had never been down there before. I was a little terrified of the flight at first.
Yeah, that's a little scary.
14 hours from LA to Melbourne.
Right.
But honestly, it just wasn't that big a deal.
Nice.
And
Did you do anything outside of Melbourne, or did you mostly just stay in Melbourne?
I mostly just stayed in Melbourne because I did well in poker, so
Right.
I was stuck in the tournament. Yeah, unluckily, more than some of my friends may have been.
So brutal.
Yeah, I know. I ran so bad to do so well in the tournaments.
You got like fifth in the 25K?
Yeah,
Is that right?
We chopped it. We actually chopped the 25K five ways.
Oh, nice. Perfect.
Yeah.
It's a little unfair to get fifth after you chop it and everyone's like,
It
oh.
is, yeah, exactly. So
Well.
chopped it five ways, and then I got seventh in the main.
Nice. Wow, that's great. I actually didn't know that somehow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
What a nice little trip down there.
Yeah, exactly. So
That's pretty sweet.
I didn't get to explore the rest of Australia as much though, which is the downside. But
Right.
I got some good exploring time in Melbourne though.
Are you planning on going back in the fall?
I haven't decided yet. If you had asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said 0% chance. But now that I've been there, I think it's pretty likely,
Oh,
just
that's
because
awesome.
of how much I loved it there.
I'm actually pretty sure I'm going to go later in the year as well. We can do some touring together.
Oh, definitely.
We could do some exploring. It would be
Yes.
great. So, what's next for you? What are you up to? What are your plans for the next few months? You know.
My next few months are actually the first bit of downtime I've had in like 6-7 months.
Wow.
I've been really on what I like to call the high roller circuit recently, which
The ballin,
No.
the ballin circuit.
Well, it's this like brand new thing which had never existed, where there's these just random one-of high roller tournaments in various locations around the world.
Right.
And like there used to be these big tournaments that were one, maybe two a year.
Right.
And now honestly there's 12 to 17
and the whole it's
of
crazy.
like super high roller tournaments. There's like one every 3 to 4 weeks.
I heard there was one in South Africa last week. Is that right?
There was one in South Africa. It was 2 days ago, actually.
Oh, really? You didn't want to go to that one though? I
No, because such a long flight from Melbourne to
guess.
get to South Africa.
Oh yeah, especially from Melbourne, right? It's gonna
Yeah,
be crazy.
exactly. But that is actually the first one I've missed in like 5-6 months. I've been in.
Do they get a lot of people for that tournament?
No, not at all. Which I knew it wouldn't. Also.
Well, yeah, that's a hard place to run 100K or
Yeah,
whatever.
it only got 9 people there.
Okay.
But before then, I had been in Melbourne, Bahamas, London, Paris, St. Kitts,
Wow.
and then touring various cities in America too.
The full circuit.
Yeah, I was in 7 countries in 9 weeks at one point.
Wow. So it must be nice to have some downtime coming up then. at least.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's great to just like relax, unwind, and get life back on.
Well, I know very well that outside of poker, you have a couple major passions. I would say UFC is pretty much up there, much like myself.
Very much so. Yes.
Yeah, so you must be excited. There's a couple big fights coming up at least. I mean, there's nothing on like the immediate horizon. I'm actually most excited for Hendricks Lawler. I think that
Really?
fight is going to be. I don't know. I feel like it's a new day. GSP has been champion since forever. I don't know. I think it's kind of an exciting matchup.
I mean, what are your thoughts on Lawler, though?
I think I think Hendricks wrestling is obviously insane.
I mean, I think Hendricks is just kind of superior on
almost every way.
all ways.
I just think Robbie Lawler is one of those kids that he just comes in there and just somehow like finds a way. He's just like
I agree, but I feel in my, obviously as an amateur eye to the sport, whenever there's the matchup where two fighters seem close, where the
Right.
better fighter is just slightly better in every discipline,
Right.
those fights usually actually end up being blowouts. Because there's never really the way for the slightly inferior fighter to find his edge.
what did you think though about the McDonald fight with Lawler? Because that to me kind of proved to me like, wow, he actually can kind of stand his own, hold his own to some degree.
Yeah, I'm still not really sure about the variance that goes on in these fights.
Oh, I think it's pretty high, to be
I think
honest.
the variance is huge,
Right.
and we make so many assumptions and guesses from one-off fights
Right.
where these guys will never fight each other again. Like, I still feel that despite, several losses now, that, like, Rory McDonald is unbelievable. Like,
Right.
absolutely unbelievable. And I just like to be like, hey, it's variance, the guy lost. But then people are like, oh, look at these losses, he's not all he was cracked up to be.
Right,
It's
right.
really hard to know what the truth is in between, I feel.
Right. Don't you feel, though, to some degree, like, I don't know, I guess it kind of is like a chicken and an egg kind of thing, but don't you feel like poker has generally kind of like shaped your mindset to approach almost all problems in life from that poker player mindset of
Definitely,
like EV?
definitely, yes.
Yeah.
You talk to any poker player now, and they'll all say that their entire view of life calculations is in that EV mindset now.
Right.
Which honestly, I think it's a very important skill, and I think it's a very easy skill. I think this is something that should be taught in grade school.
Really?
Like when you're learning
Well,
early math, early probabilities, you should have a really good functionality of what is luck, what is value, what do results mean for the rest of your life.
Right,
Because
that
this
does make
comes
sense.
up all the time in every single aspect of life.
In problem solving, I think is the key.
Yeah.
Like it really helps, I think, to be able to evaluate situations and not to be like, okay, so we walk outside into the hallway and there's some crazy event happening. Like to understanding that as a 1 in 1,000 sort of an event that most of the time won't happen. I don't think that ever was like really explained to me in a way that I got it until I found poker and I was like 20. You know what I mean?
Exactly, completely agree. And I found poker at the same time, and
Right.
there was a huge shift in the way my brain worked from
Right.
that moment onwards, I feel.
Right. It's very interesting. But yeah, back to the UFC stuff coming up. Like, yeah, I mean,
I actually haven't gotten to see the Musasi Machida fight.
yeah, that was
But-
just last Saturday.
But I heard actually from people that it wasn't as exciting maybe as I would have hoped or thought to be.
Yeah, I actually kind of feel like Musasi has been a little bit overrated throughout the course of his career.
Because he's had to fight such scrubs, kind of.
Sure, he's been untested, I think is a good way
Yeah.
to put it. Like, I think
Like-
people have always been more excited than I ever was, because it's like,
I've always absolutely loved Musasi, I
Right.
should say.
Oh, as a fighter, I think
As a-
he's a
yeah.
great fighter. But I still think like I don't know, man. Like Machida's been tested. Like
Yeah,
Machida,
yeah.
he's gonna go in there and do his thing, and he lives off of guys like Musasi. Like the guys that are not really gonna be able to really, threaten him with wrestling or anything like that.
How
I don't
did he
know.
look for the weight cut? Was it
He
noticeable?
looked fine. He looked good. I didn't watch the weigh-ins, but he seemed fine day of the fight. He kept 5 rounds of good momentum
Yeah.
going. I mean, it wasn't like a barn burner, but I thought it was pretty good. All
That's
in all.
good. I mean, Machida's always been, I always say, just my favorite fighter from...
I was there when you
You
got
were
the
there,
when you got
yeah.
the high five, right?
Yeah, the fist pound.
Oh,
I
the
got the
fist
Machida
pound.
fist pound.
I was there. UFC
Yeah.
100. We were together for that
Exactly.
fight.
Couldn't
That's
wash
right.
my hand for a week.
That's right. Do you remember when we bet on Lesnar against Frank Mir?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we had these great seats, and everyone was like rooting for Mir.
Absolutely, everyone's
Only
rooting
the
for
four
Mir.
of us
We
who
were
bet
the
on
only ones in the
Lesnar.
entire place rooting for Lesnar.
And when he won, it was really a good moment.
But on the other hand, we also bet on Hendo, and so we got to cheer with the rest of the entire stadium for the
I don't
punch.
remember that. That was a great night, though.
That was an amazing night all around.
Boy, that was a great summer because those tickets were not cheap, as I recall.
No,
we
no.
kind of went a little nuts there and just kind of like.
Well, we were like,
went
this
all
is going to be
out.
a once in a lifetime opportunity, and looking back, it really was.
It
That
really was.
card was like an unbelievable
Yeah,
card.
GSP Alves, right?
Yeah, yeah,
and then
yeah.
and then Mir Lesnar, and
then
then
Hendo
Hendo
Bisping.
Bisping. That's great. Yeah, pretty wild day of fights
Also
there,
pretty
all in all.
interesting looking back and looking at how those careers changed to see that Hendo Bisping was the main card. That was the final fight.
Right,
if you
right.
look at those 3 fights and the names on it, you might be surprised or even kind of shocked looking forward that ended up being what was the main draw fight there.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it was the main draw. You really
Well,
think so?
they call them all main fights, but
Sure,
still,
sure.
it has to mean something to make that one the final fight, I feel.
What, was it the main
I
fight?
thought it was.
I remember there
Maybe
was a weird
There was a weird order.
Yeah, there was like a fight that was at the end that was like weird. I remember, but it wasn't. I thought GSP
thought-
was the. Or maybe it
I
wasn't.
honestly can't remember.
We'd have to find
now.
this
Yeah,
out.
we're gonna
The
have to
internet
check
will
this
know
out.
way
The
before.
internet, yeah, immediately the internet's already like, oh,
Sorry,
you idiot.
you're wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah,
But
exactly.
to be fair, you're right and we are wrong.
Right,
so,
right.
Okay.
So that's it.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
bow
Thank
to
you.
you.
Thank you.
So what else do you do besides? I know you love the UFC, and obviously you've been very consumed with like poker. And I think of all my friends, I feel like you're one of the best like poker thinkers, and spend a lot of your time doing this. I feel like
Yeah, yeah.
that is
Honestly, I just love games. I love problem solving. I love puzzles, and
Right.
poker just like scratches every itch I have for
Right.
competition and problem solving in a way that I really enjoy. Like anything that creates a competitive environment is something I've always loved.
which I guess is why you like Magic as well, because it's very similar. I feel like than to
Yeah, yeah.
poker.
Although that's actually a recent thing. Like all my friends and you also, I guess, played it years ago or
Well, yeah,
forever.
yeah, a couple more years I played than you, but
Yeah.
obviously like Justin has been playing forever.
Yeah.
and,
I didn't learn it since I moved to Vegas.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I had never even heard of it. I didn't even know what it was
Oh.
until the guys here,
Right.
where I would see them play all the time. I'm like,
Sure.
what is this card game? I love card games. Tell me about this.
I love cards. I love games.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
play.
exactly.
Yeah,
But,
right.
So it was a newer thing for me, but
Right.
it was great also. But aside from that, in UFC, I really enjoy tennis.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I used to play tennis competitively in high school, and I've always loved it. I love watching tennis. I try to go to the U.S. Open every year.
Did you go to the one in
And
Australia? Was that?
I did not, because they actually changed the dates of the Australia tournaments this year to make it not being during the Australian
Men's.
Open.
Right.
And that's
Oh,
actually
yeah.
why I went this year, because normally you have to fly straight from Bahamas to Australia to make the tournaments in time.
Right. They moved it
But
around.
they
a little
moved
bit.
it 2 weeks later back, so I was like, okay,
Oh,
I'm going to relax
cool.
for 2 weeks and then go.
That was nice of them.
Now that I did the flight and realized it wasn't as like terrifying as I had it in my mind,
Right.
next year I'll definitely go earlier to make sure I go for the tennis.
Oh, that's awesome. When I went to Australia, I flew from New York to Australia,
Oh,
which
God,
which
so-
was already pretty brutal, like
Yeah.
like Bahamas. And not only that, but I actually flew coach with our friend Leo, and we had the two middle seats in a row of four.
No.
It was pretty brutal, all in all. But I remember being fine. I remember it was like a okay thing. But
Yeah.
look, you know, doing it these days, I can't imagine I would be enjoying it. But at the time, I enjoyed it. It was a fine trip. All in all.
Yeah. I wasn't in business or anything like that. I was
Right.
in coach, but they have like premium economy,
Sure.
which is kind of a giant trap, except for I flew Qantas and have to give them a shout out for easily the best airline I've been on.
Right.
Just like,
They do a good job, all in all.
I had never been on a Qantas flight before, just
Right.
incredible.
Right.
And I was in, and they have a front row, exit row that has nothing in front of you.
Okay.
And those seats like recline and have footrests.
Oh, that's
just those
great.
front row seats.
Yeah,
so
right.
even though I was in coach, I could like fully lie down, footrest, sprawl, and I was set.
Right, the life.
Yeah, exactly.
Really easy.
Living the dream.
So a year ago, pretty much almost exactly a year and a month ago, you won the 100K in Bahamas,
Yeah.
right? It was your second seven-figure score, which is obviously like no big deal. It's a seven. It's been
It's only two of them.
It's
I mean,
been
come on.
yeah. It's been a year since then. You must be jonesing a little bit for your next one.
A little bit.
Do you feel like you still have like poker goals? You've obviously accomplished so much, but do you still feel like there's more goals ahead of you in poker?
Honestly, and it kind of sounds like a cop-out answer, but I've never really viewed it as a goal or something to reach. I just have this like competitive drive where every individual tournament, every individual hand moment, I want to do as well as I can and to try and beat the competition. And that's always what's motivated me, just like the idea of I'm playing a game against these people think that they can beat me, I'm going to prove them wrong.
Right.
Like I get in this like really crazy mindset.
That's
Like,
great though. I
my,
think.
my guess would be if you talk to 95% of the world's best poker players, maybe even higher than 95%, they'll say how the most important skill of a poker player is to remove emotion, to just try and be analytical, make the best decisions each time. I'm in the 1%.
You're in the other vein.
I'm in the other vein where I'm just like, you know what? These guys think they can beat me. How dare they? Fuck them.
How dare
I'm going
they?
to teach them a thing or two that
Right.
I'm still top dog. And
Right.
that always motivates me. So
Right,
I just
right.
like get this fuel from within of just like, who are these new kids that think they can hang with me? I got to show them they're wrong.
Right. That's pretty
But,
amazing, actually.
I mean,
all in
it's
all.
weird, but that's the truth of the matter. Where I
Right,
just,
right.
really get fired up thinking about just like the longevity of it. Like anyone can win a tournament. Anyone can be best for a day, week, month, year even.
Sure.
My goal has always been the longevity. I want people to say, oh, for the past 5 years, if you want to say
Right.
who's the guy that's been at the top, I want Scott to be one of the names that they think of.
Right.
So that's always what's fueled me. It's
That's
never
pretty
any
strong.
individual score or anything like
Sure,
that.
sure. That definitely makes sense. So, your friend group is kind of similar to my friend group. We share a lot of friends. But have you, as the years have gone on, obviously the game has evolved. We're no longer the young guns as we used
Yeah.
to be. Like we're both a little bearded.
We both went
we
like
both
this
did that. Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah, but have you made a lot of friends with like the newer young generation, or do you mostly stick with like your own group as far as like hand sharing goes and like
I
learning?
almost entirely stick with my own group.
Yeah.
But honestly, there's been this weird phenomenon where there isn't really that much of a newer generation.
You don't think it's from Black Friday? Just probably.
Very much so.
Oh, yeah.
At the highest of levels, at least.
Sure.
Just and in my mind, I think it's so much harder to run it up from like $5 to $50,000.
Yeah, sure.
Than it used to be. Like,
Right.
like everyone has the story that you talk to that's our age of like, how'd you get started in poker?
Right.
At some point, they had $5 and they got unbelievably lucky.
Sure.
Like,
Absolutely.
10th level standard deviation, 99.99% lucky,
Right.
and they didn't realize it at the time.
Sure. I feel that way. It's definitely
Yeah,
true.
definitely. I mean, for me,
Yeah.
very first tournament I ever played, I like didn't know the rules of poker. I just put money onto party poker. I played in a 109 MTT because I just didn't
Wow.
know shit about anything.
Wow.
Like I played a $20 home game.
Did you win that tournament? How did that end?
I got second for 9K.
Oh my
I
god.
was like, oh my god, poker's so easy.
Right.
I ended up like losing all this money back just
Sure, of
because
course.
I was beyond terrible.
Right.
And then one summer, I was living with a friend of mine from college, Jared Oken, who also became a professional poker player.
Cool.
And there used to be a weekly free roll on Party Poker back then, where it was winner take all, $1,500 real cash,
Okay.
and it would get like 10,000 people.
Yeah, of course.
Jared and I both won it back-to-back weeks when we
Wow.
were living together.
Wow. That's
we-
really strong.
And we just thought this was normal. We're
Right,
just
right,
like,
right.
oh yeah, look, we're
Of course
amazing.
we won this 10,000
how
person
could we
free roll.
not?
Right.
And like looking back at it now, it's the most unbelievably implausible thing to
Right.
get started.
Right.
But there were just so many opportunities for it to happen, and there were enough people trying that, there were
Right.
10 million Scott Sievers. I'm the one that happened to hit this 1 in 10 million shot.
Sure. Although I do think that I would even say for both of us, like I think we both have a level of like drive and like desire to like like you just talked about for your like I know that's developed over the
Yeah.
years to some degree, but there is still like an element of like you worked super hard.
Oh, certainly. I'm not
Yeah.
going to try and say I didn't work hard.
Sure.
But it's kind of
It still
it's kind of a
requires-
chicken and egg thing. I worked
Sure.
hard because I was in a situation
Because you got lucky
where
to
I
get in this
thought,
situation.
working hard could get me there.
Right.
I would have never had that thought had I not gotten lucky at first.
Right.
But now after Black Friday, there were just not even that there were less opportunities, and it's not that the games were harder because people like to say that. I truly think it's very overhyped. That
Really?
part. I actually, yeah, I do.
You mean online or you mean as a whole? You mean
As
like-
a whole.
Really?
But what I think changed is just the number of people trying.
Sure.
So say there were 10 million, Jason Somerville's out there trying, 10,000 cleared the first hurdle, 100 cleared the next hurdle.
Right.
Now there's only, say, 100,000 Jason Somerville's trying.
Sure. So this the field just winnowed.
Yeah.
Minnowed.
Minnowed works too, actually.
Makes
but,
sense,
yeah.
yeah. But that does make sense.
So
That
I
does
just
make
think
sense.
there's a lot fewer people of the next generation that have made it to the upper levels just
Right.
because the stopgaps are so much more and this funnel happened.
I look back to the time where I was just like in London playing a 10K, was sat next to Daniel Negreanu. He had his headphones on, and I was just like, hey, I'm a big fan. And he was like, oh yeah, thanks, kid. And I just like wouldn't let that stop me and just like
Yeah.
kept talking to him until we had a conversation about making videos. That's how I got started. And if I hadn't gotten that opportunity, and if I hadn't like the amount of things that had to go right for me to get there, and
yeah.
then he had to pay attention to me and then get me like the amount of doors that happened, I got so lucky to open is incredible.
Oh yeah, all the stories when you look at like how your bankroll started or your first person that you met are crazy.
Right,
Like
yeah,
they're like
sure.
absolutely wild, implausible events that have happened.
Right, you just put yourself in these situations to get an opportunity to get lucky. I think is a lot of
Yeah.
the formula.
But I remember when I was 22,
How old are you now?
28.
Okay, nice.
I was living with Isaac Haxton. We had both just graduated college.
A big mentor of yours, as
Yeah, in college he was already a professional poker player, and I'm like, oh, poker, that looks fun. Like I would watch him play like Limit Hold'em online, and be like, oh my god, you just won like $2,000. Okay, pizza's on you today. Like it would like blow my mind seeing these numbers. Like,
right.
So, but I remember like at this point I'm already playing like kind of high stakes online at this point,
Right.
and I remember thinking, or I remember it just being so overcome at me, like, I'm the best in the world, this is amazing, this is so easy. And Isaac used to be like, yeah, maybe you are now, but the next generation's coming, watch out. Like, we're the young guns now, but then someone's going to come,
Right.
they're going to read all the same things we read and more.
And more,
This
right.
is just how it goes, watch out, here they come.
Right.
Honestly, this kind of never really happened.
Right.
And I think a lot of that is Black Friday. You look at like all the top players now across the board, they're all between the ages of like
Sauce and Galfond.
they're all between the ages of like 26 and 30.
Right,
They're
right.
kind of my age group. Dan Smith is
Yeah.
probably the youngest
right
of them, and he's 25
20
or
yeah,
26.
26, I think. Yeah, but yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting, actually, now that you point that out like that. I guess Europeans tend to be a little bit younger because they didn't have the Black Friday impact. But
But
besides
even
that,
then, and there's only a couple of them. There's Ole Shemian,
Yep,
who's
yep.
an incredible player, and he's
really, you're a big fan of his game?
big fan.
Okay.
And he's like 21. But other than him, there's very few top players
See,
under the age of 25.
Did most of those Germans get started when we got started and we just didn't like meet them until recently?
Yeah.
Because I didn't know Phil or Tobias until the last couple of years.
I had always heard of Tobias, didn't know like who he was or his game, but I
Right.
remember even like 5-6 years ago hearing, oh, there's this kid Tobias, he's the man.
Right,
he
right,
had
right.
that hand that became a huge YouTube thing
Against Roland DeWolf.
Roland
We were
DeWolf.
just talking about that
Oh,
the other
really?
day. Yeah, just
So
coincidentally.
I knew Tobias mostly from that Roland DeWolf hand. I was
Right.
like, wow, this kid is the ultimate mega boss.
Right.
Like
Tobias called, right? Or on the river?
Tobias called with like queen high because he had seen multiple hands during this tournament where Roland had been called and every time he was bluffing just mucked his hand.
Okay.
So there was some crazy scary board
Right.
and Roland bet like 80% of his stack on the river. And
Right.
I think Tobias had jack high
Right.
on a board where there's no chance jack high could be good.
Sure,
ever.
sure.
It was like Roland's bluffs had to be king high because the board was like 10-9, 6-2, whatever.
Right.
And Toby thinks for a while and like then very confidently goes like, I've got you, call.
Wow.
And Roland
Wow.
Roland
He's bluffing the
mucks his
bluff.
hand.
He's bluffing
Yeah.
the call. I mean, like.
And Roland just
wow.
mucks his hand and Tobias shows. Tobias goes, haha, like, and just shows.
Wow.
And Roland, this actually isn't shown on the clip, but Roland causes a huge stink and they like stopped the tournament for a while because
Right.
he was like, I could beat that hand. There's my cards. Give me the pot. And they actually tried to give him the pot until
Right.
a higher up floor was like, no, you mucked your hand. Too
Thank
bad.
God. Thank God. Could you imagine? Oh my,
Oh my god.
That would have been nuts.
So yeah, I had always known Tobias as being this like ultimate boss because
Right.
anyone that can A, think to pull that off, and then B, choose to do so, and like
and then be right about it. It's crazy.
the parlay is beyond unbelievable.
Right,
so,
right.
So yeah, I don't really know the others as well beforehand. I had heard of Fabian Quas,
Yeah,
just
right.
because I had known the name online from playing MTTs.
Sure.
But Phil and Igor, I did not.
Right.
But there's no reason for me to think they weren't around. I think they were.
Right, I think they've been around for a while. Of
Yeah.
all the guys that you see on the high stakes circuit and everything, is there anybody that you see that you're like, wow, those guys are really sick? Maybe you don't want to say, maybe you do want to say, I don't know. But is there anybody that you like really respect particularly, like as far as being ahead of the curve or always being on their A game, anything like that?
I mean, it depends on like what field you're looking at right now.
Sure, mostly
like,
in like the super high rollers I meant.
Oh,
but,
okay. Because I was
yeah.
gonna say like in the cash games and stuff, that's still like
Right.
it's like almost trite to say, but it's just unbelievable like how far ahead I feel Sauce and Ben Tollerine are
Right,
from
right.
everyone. Just like the way they view poker and think about it and work at it.
It's
are just
crazy how smart those guys are.
It's
I mean,
incredible too.
Yeah.
Not only how smart they are, but that they can be that smart and work that hard.
Right.
I've always found there's like a very close correlation with most people that the harder or the smarter you are, the less you work.
Sure.
Because you never had incentive to at any point in your life. Like
Right,
you
right.
were always able to coast by. These guys are both like super smart and unbelievable hard workers.
Right.
Just a great
I
combination.
I had the privilege of watching Ben play like a 10-table session.
Which Ben? Because they're both
Tollerini, for like maybe like I don't know, like an hour or two. He was playing like just 10-tabling back in the days you could play in America, and I was
Yeah.
like blown away by like how good he was, like making decisions at every table. It was crazy, all playing like super high stakes,
Yeah.
kind of nuts. But yeah,
Yeah.
you think those two guys are
I
pretty
think
much
the both Bens
for
are
cash
just,
are way ahead
yeah.
at least. But for tournaments, do you have any particular like favorites that you see that?
Honestly, like everyone's just really good now. You see
Yeah.
these like super high rollers, they all get like 25 players in them. There's like the same 8 pros or so that are playing them,
Right.
and these like 8 or 9 guys that I think are
All
just really great players.
Pretty
yeah.
similarly great. How do you feel that the older guard has fared in like these newer days? Because obviously now it's gotten even tougher and tougher. I mean,
To be blunt and honest, I think
that's all we would
it's-
love from
yeah,
you.
Yeah.
That's what we expect from Scott
Exactly.
Seaver here. You know.
I think it's tough for a lot of the older guys just because in the same way that I thought, as Isaac said, it'd be tough for me and us as younger kids came.
Right.
They just have more resources.
Sure,
But this actually did happen, except for with the the huge glaring exception of Negreanu.
Oh, really?
Like, I think what he's done is so impressive because he put in a huge amount of work. He put in the hours.
Right.
He started off. He had this decision, I guess, like 12 or maybe even like 15 months ago.
Okay.
Maybe even longer ago. Maybe almost 2 years ago, where he just started. He jumped online and started playing 100, 200 no limit every day.
You know, it's funny. He asked me to come install Poker Tracker at his house so he could start doing that.
Yeah.
So I was around.
How long ago was this?
That was-
I want
that
to say
was-
like a year and a half ago.
Well, it couldn't have been because it's playing online here.
Oh, so it was a while
It
ago.
was
Yeah.
before Black Friday.
Yeah, my sense of time is just awful
Yeah,
these days.
yeah.
Another sign of being old.
I think it was closer to like 3 years ago, but like very like
Yeah,
near
yeah.
towards the end, but not like.
Oh
you
yeah,
know.
it was definitely before Black Friday.
It was
'cause
before
I
Black
remember
Friday,
because I was actually living in Vegas during it. So yeah, it had to have been.
Yeah, right.
But
yeah,
I remember like he jumped in, and for sure there was. I mean, I don't know for sure, but
Yeah.
I would strongly assume there was no chance he could possibly be beating those games to
Right,
start.
right.
He just jumped in, would like get theoretically crushed, and just kept playing every day.
Right.
And you could just see quickly he'd get better and better and better. And you'll talk to him, he'll say the exact same thing. I've
Right.
had this conversation with him.
Right.
Like the first couple months he started playing 20, 30-man wait lists.
Right.
By the third month he was playing 3-man wait lists.
Right.
By the fourth month he was playing, there'd be a seat or two open in the game.
All right, that's impressive, man.
And it's exactly
At those stakes,
to just
that's
play
hard.
like the highest stakes there are. But he just played like 6 days a week. He put in the work, he put in the hours, and he clearly has the mind for it.
You know-
So
you know
that
what's-
always really impresses me.
Do you remember he did those $1 million challenges back in the day at the
Yeah.
Win, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember he did those, and I remember I was just purely a fan back then. I was like maybe like a very
Oh,
low level.
we're still both fans.
Oh, of
now.
course, yeah, we're huge fans.
That
of
hasn't
course.
changed.
But, yeah, but like back in the day, that was all that I was, and I remember thinking like, wow, how sick is that? But from these days, looking back at how he was with that, and how he probably was that same way in those games, like, man, he is pretty smart cookie over there with what he.
Oh yeah,
like how he does
he's
these
extraordinarily self-aware.
things. Yeah, it's impressive.
So
Very.
he's one of the old guards, which
Right.
weird to say about kid poker. Because in your mind you think of him,
Yeah,
but yeah.
right,
But
right.
he's one of the old players that I've really respected, like how because it takes a ton of work to stay at the highest level.
Right.
And he just decided he's going to put that work in.
And did it. It's very
Yeah.
The craziest thing to me about Daniel's decision to do that is that guy does not need to play
Not a drop.
100, 200, no limit.
Yeah,
at
yeah,
all.
yeah.
And not only did he decide to do it, but then he
Purely for
actually
the
did it.
competition and like the love of the game.
You're right, purely because he
For
wanted to
staying
prove it to
relevant,
himself, and
that
yeah,
he could do it.
That's-
That's kind of what I was saying. He has that same drive, and
Sure,
so
sure.
I've always been extra impressed with him.
So you point out Daniel. Do you not feel that Ivy meets that same standard, or
It's hard to say for the kids because, and I'm calling us the kids in
Oh,
this
okay,
sense,
yeah,
because
yeah,
for years, and to this day still, Ivy's worst game by far is No Limit Hold'em.
sure.
And I feel most people don't realize that
Right.
because everyone's like, oh, Ivy's a stone cold killer. And he is. He's an unbelievable No Limit Hold'em player.
Right.
But it's his worst game by far. And like, there's just like, 8 or 10 forms of poker where he's probably top 3 in the world at every form of poker, which is like
Just pretty
an unheard of concept if
Right.
you start to stop and think about it.
Right.
So I feel maybe he hasn't really stayed on the like top 5 or 10 players in the world in No Limit.
Right.
But I still think he's a great player. But there's just so many different forms of poker that he excels at
Right.
that the people that are excelling in No Limit Hold'em are kind of just specializing in it.
Right.
So it's just an advantage there just from the time.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. Speaking about other games, you're obviously somebody who's played a bunch of mixed games in your life, and you've been around to see all the new, like when PLO was hot, and then Deuce
Yeah.
to 7 obviously is one of the more recent ones. Have you seen anything take over the open face spot? I mean, or is that still mostly like the high stakes games are mostly in that kind of...
It's crazy the speed that Open Face like took over.
Right.
But it's actually been fading a lot now.
Sure.
Which I think is very good for the games in general because like Open Face is a great diversion. It's a fun game to play, but I think it's not a poker game to be used for poker.
Right.
So
That makes sense.
it's actually been losing some of its popularity, although you can see the effect it's having on live poker rooms, the amount of like Open Face that gets spread at these random places.
Oh, yeah, like Bellagio almost always has a game going. Like,
Yeah,
It's
but
kind of crazy.
it's good that instead of 20 games going, it's like a game going of it.
Right.
And there's a place for it, and it's great, but like anything else, it has its time, it has its moment, and
They're doing a bracelet event this year? Is that a thing they're actually doing?
I think so. I'm
I heard
honestly
about
not
it,
sure. I
but
heard something about it, but
yeah.
I don't know. Internet already knows we're sorry. We're sorry.
Yeah, sorry,
Thank you. You tell us, but
Yeah.
I honestly don't know.
How would you feel about that if there was a bracelet event?
I remember the whole argument that people are talking about on Twitter. I have several beliefs on it.
Okay.
In the pure theory world, I think it should not be a bracelet event because I don't view it as a poker game. From a technical and legal standpoint, like there's no betting.
There's no betting rounds. Yeah.
It's all open information.
Right.
It's a lot closer to like backgammon
Right,
than
right,
poker. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I think backgammon's a great game. I think open face is a great game.
Right.
I don't think it's poker.
Gotcha.
But my real perspective is, of course, it should be a bracelet event because who the hell cares?
Right.
Like,
Right.
at the end of the day, making it a bracelet event will make people play it, will generate revenue, generate rake, generate interest. Those are
Yeah.
all good things.
Of course.
There's actually no downside. You could say, oh, it's like tarnishing what a bracelet means, or it's not a poker game.
Right.
Who cares? The people that care what a bracelet means, I think, are becoming a lot fewer and fewer. And I don't think it matters. Like,
I think it's easier for us to say when we're the bracelet kids over here.
well, no,
Yeah.
but now there's like 60 bracelet events a year,
Right,
And
right.
so like what are you going to do about it? I think more importantly, you have to think about what helps the overall growth of poker, what helps the growth of the game.
Right.
That's generating interest, generating numbers, getting people to Vegas to play.
What do you think about the shot clock as part of that, or like somehow fixing that element of?
I've said for years that I think the shot clock is like integral to the future success of tournament poker.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That I think it's pretty mandatory. Although, it's funny you mentioned this, I just had a pretty long conversation a week ago or so in Australia with someone that was against the shot clock, and he brought up great reasons that really made me rethink it.
Really, such as?
He's it came up in conversation because the 100K in Australia uses a shot clock.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the only tournament that does. They've
Okay.
done it every year for the past several years.
Actually, I think I do remember that. They were doing it when I was there. I think.
Yeah,
so, yeah. The year that Lederer was in it, and yeah,
Really good
Yeah.
times.
It was good. I don't know where did I play that tournament? I don't know. It was pretty nuts though back in the day. But yeah, seriously.
But he was saying that it's pretty bad for recreational players because it's putting this onus on them to make decisions more quickly in spots where they might feel uncomfortable to do so. And yes, even he was like, I think it's pretty terrible the amount of time these pros are taking in all these situations where it's exaggerated for the sake of balance or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But in reality, it's pretty much putting a handicap against all the amateurs, and it's just
Right.
another way to keep the amateurs down and let the professionals win more easily.
Right. That
he-
does make sense.
And it made a lot of sense to me. And he said this as a player that enjoys playing these 100K and higher tournaments. He's like,
Right.
I felt a little uncomfortable because here I am playing against all these kids that I know play this all the time
Like
and are
82
brilliant
tables
at it.
online. Right.
And now I have to make my decisions in 15 seconds, make them, make decisions on the stock market in 15 seconds, and then come talk to me.
Right,
But why do I
right.
have to go into their, area of expertise and be
Right.
told you have 15 seconds to figure this out?
Right. That does make a lot
And
of
I have
sense.
to admit, it made a lot of sense to me.
I think there's I don't know, like the balance of like, for me the issue really hasn't been people that sit there for like 3 minutes and think about a spot as much as it is people that just kind of like every time they sit and wait for like 15 seconds and then just fold. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like those guys.
I just have no tolerance for those people. See,
Yeah.
I'm vocal, to put it mildly.
Oh
and
really?
I-
Tell us more.
I just do not stand for that bullshit.
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
don't.
yeah.
Like, if you're the type of person that, like, it's on you and you're taking 20 seconds to sweat each card, think for 10 seconds, then fold, I mean, I'm going to say something repeatedly.
I don't watch a ton of poker stuff these days because there's not really a lot to watch from here in America.
It's changed.
But I saw the little thing with you and Jungleman, and I thought that was very interesting. I was like, well, that's Scott for you. That's my buddy.
and I have to admit, they edited terribly. Like,
They did?
but whatever.
Yeah.
But, like,
yeah.
yeah.
But things like that
that's
are
a-
really annoying, I think. And,
Yeah.
you know.
Not to mention, it's one of those, like, I don't want to use the word pet peeve because I actually think it's an important issue. But it's
Right.
one of the things that, like,
So he was folding out of position in the one seat.
yeah, he just folded out of turn. Like, cut off, like, hijack would raise, cut off's thinking, and he would fold the button.
Right.
And he did that actual either 6 or 7 times
Sure.
in 1 hour.
Right. And that should be penalized at some point.
And at some point, I'm just like, you're killing me here.
Right.
Somehow, coincidentally, it was on my raise every time. Every
Yeah.
time I raised over the
Yeah.
course of 1 hour, he folded out of turn. And I'm
And you guys are playing for a lot of money too, right?
it was
like
a 125K tournament.
Right,
125K
right.
buy-in tournament.
right.
And I'm just like, at some point, like, you can't be like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't pay attention. It's one of those things, your decisions are affecting 8 other people,
Right.
and you have a bit of an obligation. In the same way that, like, you know, you're meeting a group of people for, like, dinner at 8 p.m.
Right.
You show up at 8:15. Yes,
Right.
it costs you 15 minutes, but it costs 7 other people 15 minutes.
Right, right.
So it's a, you know, multiplied effect.
And it's even worse in this case because there's actual tons of money on the line.
Exactly, but
Right.
even separate from that, even if it was just a time thing, it's an exaggerated effect that, like, you're wasting, you know, 10 seconds of my time to sweat, of your own time to sweat your cards, or
Right.
you're wasting 10 seconds of 8 other people's time too.
Sure, absolutely.
So I don't know. I feel
For
there's
sure.
got to be a level of politeness at the table with these things.
All right. I feel like we've covered a very broad spectrum of like poker issues in this conversation,
Yeah.
you know? But this is awesome. I
Yeah,
had
of
so
course.
much fun. This was so great talking with you and everything.
Always.
You hold the record as longest hangout for sure. I haven't even looked
Oh,
at the
nice.
clock.
What's
I'm
the
sure.
time?
I think we're
Oh,
at,
wow.
we're at almost 40 minutes.
Oh,
This
nice.
was-
It feels like 5 minutes.
It feels like 5 minutes.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
getting old, I think. We're just like reminiscing
yeah,
for 40
yeah.
minutes. It
We're
was
losing
great.
our mind. We're senile.
We didn't even
It's-
talk about like magic really in depth.
No, we haven't talked
could've
about
talked-
anything.
I know, we really did.
We didn't really get to talk much UFC either.
I know, we just like stopped by. We'll have to do this again. For
Oh,
sure.
definitely.
This was awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, you guys should tweet at Scott_Seaver. Very tricky.
Yup.
Whoever that guy is that took Scott Seaver, I don't know. But yeah, Scott_Seaver. Say hello. Thanks for coming on and running it up. It was great. If you want to see him
Nice.
come back, you gotta let him know. You know, you gotta
to know.
let him know. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, guys. Let us know what you thought in the comments below, and I will see you guys back for more very soon. Peace.